Well, here we are. We're back. As some of you know, we've been away for the last few weeks. We haven't been able to do any videos because Peter here forgot to bring his cell phone to Central America, and we couldn't log in to YouTube to verify who we were. So it had to be put on the back burner while we were away, and I apologize for that. I had meant to do them and just couldn't literally do it. What I wanted to start with, one of the first videos now that we're back, is I wanted to take a quick look back and see how some of the auctions went while we were gone. In particular, the Hong Kong sales, which just took place a few days ago, and a look back also. I wanted to go over the Jim Lally sale. Jim Lally, J.J. Lally and Company, as you know, was a long-standing Chinese art dealer in New York City. He began his career legendarily at Sotheby's, rising to the position of president of the company, and really got the ball rolling for Sotheby's in Hong Kong during the 1980s. An amazing career, and I want to go through because the results from his auction were quite extraordinary, and including the library, which brought just a little under $900,000, which is pretty impressive for a pile of books. But books are important, so if you're building a library, that should encourage you. So let's have a look here. What went on? This was one of the sales that was in Hong Kong. The results: important Chinese works of art on the 8th, just about a little over around a week ago. The results were pretty good, but they were kind of spotty. And if you go through it, you're going to find the very, very best things, the rarest things, as always, did pretty well. The middle market was a little soft, and I think that has a lot to do with what's going on in the world, the economy, and so forth. And people are focusing in on the great rarities when they turn up. And there were a number of great rarities in Hong Kong this past few days. Some extraordinary pieces, and they brought some extraordinary amounts of money. And we're going to go through them. So let's get going. And the first one I want to talk about is this Falun Kai dragon vase with blue enamel Yongchen mark on the bottom. This is a fantastically rare piece. It was produced at the Imperial kilns in Jingdezhen, and then it was decorated at the palace. And this is the kind of thing that Yongchen porcelain also seems to be doing very well across the board. The past couple of sales, a lot of the highlights were Yongchen period pieces and some Kangxi pieces, of course, and a little bit of Qianlong. But the Yongchen examples really took off. And maybe the quality is, of course, excellent on the Imperial pieces, and the relative length of the reign compared to that of Kangxi and Qianlong was quite a bit shorter. So that may also be contributing to this, what appears to be a bit of a spike in values. Anyway, there's this. And this was an absolutely beautifully done vase. The details on this were quite extraordinary, and as I said, this was something that was made at the Imperial kilns and then decorated at the Imperial atelier at the palace. And just a really, really beautiful example. It was in exceptional condition from everything I could see, but the decoration was just so saturated. This puce color was a fairly new one at the time, and they were experimenting with it, and this was the result. Excellent shading, beautiful fine details. The dragon's face is wonderfully done, and in the end, it did very, very well. It brought 60 million Hong Kong dollars, or roughly around $7.5 million US for this vase. And these aren't enormous vases. This one was a foot tall, it's 12 inches tall, and pretty typical size for this form and shape. All right, and then over to this, another pair of Yongchen examples was this lovely pair of little cups, simple cups or bowls, done in this very rare pink enamel, beautifully potted, and the way they're shaped was really the shape, the fineness of the shape, the fineness of the glaze, the perfection is what drove the price. And of course, they're Yongchen mark and period. They were marked on the bases, right there, here, and here on this one, and they provide some pretty good pictures of the foot rims and what they should look like. And lately I've noticed that the forgers in China are getting better and better at doing foot rims. It's getting a little scary out there. We're going to be looking at an auction in the next couple of days of fakes that's coming up out in California. That is, they have some very convincing looking pieces, and they're all reproductions. So stick around for that. You'll see it probably, hopefully, the beginning of next week. But this pair of beautiful bowls, really, really lovely, ended up selling for $8,255,000 Hong Kong, or around a little over $1 million US. They had the only provenance they had, they come from Marchant and Sons in London. So they obviously had them. They picked them up. They had great sources, and these did extremely well. And then over to this. This is a very interesting, a Khotan green jade Qianlong period. And what was interesting about this, if you read this listing, it did very well. It brought 48 million Hong Kong dollars, or around 6 million US. Previously it had been in the collection of Émile Guimet. And Émile Guimet is the fellow who made the donation that began the Guimet Museum in Paris. It was based around, the core of the museum's collection is based around his personal collection. He was a very famous collector. A lot of the things that he owned were believed to have come from the Summer Palace. And this kind of thing is often associated with that robbery that took place. But a beautiful, beautiful jade seal, estimated 20 to 40 million Hong Kong dollars, ended up selling for 48 million, or as I said, around 6 million US. But spectacular quality, and they provided a lot of photographs of it, and you can really get into it and take a good solid look. This is what it looks like, and you see the quality of the carving, the finish, the polish all through here, the little details. This has everything going for it, and this strikingly attractive stone that was selected for this, where they were very careful about stone selection when they were going to be making seals that would be placed in the hand of an emperor. And here's the seal on the bottom. That's what they should look like. Very, very finely done, perfectly done, and just all around perfection in how they were finished. And you can see some residue from seal paste that was on there. As I said, $6 million later, it has a new owner. And then moving along to this was the collection of, I want to get this right. This is the Yinzhu Tang collection. This is part one, so there's going to be more of it coming. A number of lots. It wasn't a huge number. I think it was around 10 or 12 lots. And the highlight of the load was this, a really rare set of seals. So these were bought, it says according to the listing that they were bought at, was it Sotheby's in 2007. This particular collector seemed to have bought a lot of things between 2000 and 2007. It was estimated at 50 to 70 million Hong Kong dollars, ended up selling for 64 million, Qianlong period, beautifully carved, a box. Obviously, let's get it in there, very deeply carved with carp and swimming in the waves and all that good stuff. The colors were excellent. The quality and finish was excellent, just on the lacquer alone. And then when you peel the box, open the box up, inside it was fitted with a selection of jade archer rings with a Z-tan liner. It doesn't get any better than that. This is just, the classic stuff that you would find at the Imperial Palace for the emperor, for his scholars' table, something for him to sit and enjoy, and so forth. And obviously, was made for him fairly. I think this was made fairly early in his reign, made on or before 1752. And there's a good write-up on it. There's a good explanation on it, on its origins and so forth, and it did very, very well. It basically brought $8 million right on the upper end of its estimate by the time the bidding was over and the buyer's premium got added. But a great rarity, definitely something that belongs in an institution at this point. And then over to this. This was a really rare bird. It was a Yongle Ming Dynasty ewer with a 5-clawed dragon on it. And this is an extremely rare one, and there's a very good. If you're interested in these materials, the ownership provenance on this is pretty good. It had been sold by Hugh Moss in London at one point, and then it was sold at Sotheby's twice. Then it was in the collections of the T.Y. Chow family, the Chow Family Trust, which was a very famous collection. A lot of it was sold off. I think all of it was sold off back in the 1980s and into the 90s, perhaps. There's a good write-up on it, but basically what Regina Crowell writes about in this article, and you should read it. because she points out that a lot of these ewers were made during the Young Low period, and those great big porcelains that everybody's familiar with that were so beautiful. They were made for as gifts. The intent when they were ordered, made by the palace, that they were ordering them to be used as gifts to give foreign dignitaries, to send to the Middle East, that kind of thing. They were used to sort of as door openers and presents from the imperial palace to other people. This ewer, they believe, was made for the emperor himself. This was made at the imperial kilns. It was decorated and done in a very specific style with the way the dragons are executed, and the border decoration, the shape and form, and so forth. And this was made for the young emperor's personal use, which makes it extremely rare, because there aren't many pieces that they could say with absolute certainty were made for the emperor from this period, but they know this one was through research and design and records and whatnot that they've been able to dig out. And it was estimate upon request, so I don't know what the estimate was, but I'm going to bet the estimate was probably in the 30 to 40 or so million Hong Kong or 50 million Hong Kong range. It did very well. It had sold for 107 million Hong Kong dollars, which is about just a, what is that? That's just a hair under about 13 million US. If you're doing the breakdown on it, something like that. But it was a beautiful example. They provided loads of images of it from every angle, and you can come in and pull it in and really study the details of it, the way the glaze meets the base, the foot rim, the very fine manner in which the dragons were executed, and of course 5-clawed dragons, and all the little extra decorations around here, the lappets and the scrolling vines, this beautifully shaped handle, all of it. It's just a great example, and very wide pear-shaped body. And there's also, of course, a good shot of the foot rim, which you do want to take a look at and get some. There it is. That's what it should look like. Nice white paste with little iron oxide, nicely finished, very refined piece. And as I said, they're getting better and better at these. So someday there may become a day when you won't be able to spot something by its foot rim alone. You may have to dig a little deeper. But at any rate, that's the bottom of it. So you've got both of the Chow Collection family stickers on there, Sotheby stickers and so forth. And like I said, $13 million later, it has a new owner. And then on to this. This was about one of the biggest lots that sold. This was the Falun Kai Swallow Bowl, also with extensive provenance and history for this piece. There's the provenance here. It's this whole paragraph here. It came from Captain Charles Oswald Liddell, who died in 1941. He lived in Shanghai and acquired it somehow. Then it went to Blewett and Sons. Then it was in the Russell collection. And then it was in Barbara Hutton's collection. And then it was back at Sotheby's. Then it was in the J.T. Tai collection. And then it was in the S.C. Coe collection. Prior to that, it was sold again at Sotheby's. And then it was in the collection of the great Robert Chang, another great collector. He was a banker from Hong Kong, legendarily generous to the town of Hong Kong and his fellow citizens. He was a great man. And then again sold in 2006 to this particular owner, and it was offered up again. And it ended up selling for 198 million Hong Kong dollars. Which is roughly around 25. Yeah, it's just about $25 million US for this bowl. So it makes it one of the real highlights of the porcelain market in the last few years, right here on this bowl. Beautifully decorated. It's got all the disciplines, the very fine porcelain produced at the Imperial Atelier, and then it was decorated in enamels, probably at the Imperial Palace, absolutely, and then calligraphy added with the rain mark. So it's got the porcelain, the artwork, and the calligraphy. That's sort of the trifecta when it comes to porcelain, and it got everybody very, very excited. This was not a big bowl. It was only a little over 4 inches in diameter. This was not a large, 9 or 10 inch bowl or anything like that. It was barely 4 inches wide. But superbly decorated, beautiful enameling, and if you really want to see Yongshan enameling at its very best, this was a great example. The way the birds were decorated, the way the flowers are shaded, so fine, so delicately, from a fairly strong red to a very light red to pink to translucent, transparent on a sort of a pinkish ivory ground. And the bowl, of course, is pure white, beautifully done, and so forth. So absolute rarity. And I hope this also ended up in a collection that'll be shared publicly, because it's a kind of bowl that they don't turn up very often. When they do, they get enormous attention, just like this one did. And again, it was an estimate upon request, but I suspect the estimate was probably 50 to 60 million or something. I think it probably went way over their estimate. They probably weren't terribly surprised, but it went over their estimate just the same. And then this is in His Majesty the Alan Chuang collection. There was not a huge amount here. There were I think like 10 lots. The lead lot didn't find a buyer. It may have sold post auction. It was a set of very rare Femi-Vert Tengshi month cups. For some reason, they didn't sell. Don't know why. They were estimated at 60 to 80 million Hong Kong, which is a little bit steep, but it was a full set. But one of the lots that did sell was this very fine chicken cup. Now you're familiar. Everybody's familiar with the famous Chenhua chicken cup that sold a number of years ago to a Chinese collector, the famous Chinese collector, for $35 million US. But there was also a lot of interest in them during the Yongchen period, where they revived these Chenhua examples and things that were popular in the period. And one of them was this cup. And in this case, it was estimated at 6 to 8 million Hong Kong dollars. It ended up selling for 14 million Hong Kong, which is about $2,210,000 for this cup. And this is a very small cup. It is 8.1 centimeters in diameter, so it's about 3 inches wide. But a lovely example, beautifully decorated, and fairly classical, obviously, and very rare. But the enameling on these Datsai enamels were very, very refined, beautifully done. It's really the artwork on this is just fabulous. And there was a nice extensive catalog note, and it goes back and it refers to the Chenhua cup from the Chow collection and so forth, and works that were illustrated in Michel Baudelay's book on fine Chinese ceramics. If you don't have any of Baudelay's books, try to pick them up. They're really worth reading. They're very readable, very relatable, and very informative. Anyway, there's a long write-up on here, and you can go and study up on these fantastic Yongchen cups and their relation to the Chenhua period. But this is gone to a new home. And then over here, this was the stuff from the Jim Lally's collection. And as I said at the beginning, he was a longtime dealer. He was very well regarded. He was a great lecturer. If you've never seen any of his lectures, they're on YouTube, and we've shared them a number of times on our channel because he's really good to listen to. He tells great anecdotes, great stories. He understands the history of how collections were built in America very, very well, going to the Frere and Frick and J.P. Morgan and the Rockefeller family and all that. And here was but basically probably what was left of his inventory. I suspect he still has other things. People like this, a guy like this that's so into it, is going to hang on to a few things for himself, and he should. But this did pretty well. This lot ended up 138 lots, brought $18,699,000 just for the ceramics. And there was another component of this also at Bonham's. And there was another component of the library at Bonham's as well. And there was part of the library was here. They sort of split it up. And this was his result. Overall, I think they did very well. It looks like they probably sold 85-90% of the lots, found buyers at significant prices. Because of the provenance of him, basically, to a large extent. A lot of these things were exhibited in his catalogs and so forth. And one of the things that did very, very well here, and this is all U.S. currency now because the sale was conducted in New York, was this very, very beautiful blue Imperial turquoise glass bottle with a Qinlong mark on the bottom, wheel cut in. Usually, I didn't look at this one yet, but I suspect it's a 4-character mark. That's usually what they do on them. Yeah, there it is, the wheel cut 4-character mark from the Qinlong period, Lally sticker and so forth, but just a sumptuous piece of blue and white Peking glass. And Peking glass has sort of been out of favor for a little while. Now it seems to be, I hope Chinese collectors begin to appreciate it because it is exceptional stuff. This one was estimated at $10,000 to $15,000, went way through that, sold for 4 times its high estimate at $60,480. It measured 8 5/7 inches tall. Wasn't very big, but it was a splendid example. Beautiful, beautiful thing. And then this was the cover lot for the catalog, and I think we talked about this in one of the preview videos. It was a very fine example of Feuillois, Guan wine jar, not terribly big, 7 inches tall, estimated at $200,000 to $300,000, and it blew that away. It went for almost 8 times its high estimate, selling for 1.5 million US. And this was an excellent example. And if you like fine Feuillois wares, you really want to look at this one, because often they don't come out all that well. We've talked about how the problem with the cracking and the chipping and the loss of enamels and so forth. They were a little tricky to make, and they were beautifully carved. This is a great example. It's really a sublime example. It's absolutely fantastically perfect. And they provided lots of images, including the base, and this is the bottom of it. And I always say that you need to come and study the bottoms of these. You can learn an awful lot about the age of a piece and how to identify and date them by understanding what the bottoms should look like. Because sometimes they can get the artwork right, but they don't get the porcelain, the part we don't always look at correctly. That's what it should look like. And like I said, $1.5 million bought it. And then over to this. This is this really fine Guan Yun Zun Lang Yao baluster vase. It was 17 inches tall. This was one of the best examples. It's been around in years. It originally came through Skinner's back in the 2005 or 6 area, as I recall, and it was quite a hit then. And this time around, it's even bigger hit. But it was beautifully done on a great-looking base, fabulous color, nice crackle in the glaze. Here's the bottom of it, looking very, very good all the way through. And this was just this is actually probably one of the best examples of this kind of porcelain in the world. This was a really great example, and it was estimated at $120,000 to $180,000. Somebody said to me before the sale, "Boy, that's a big price for that. Do you think it'll get there?" And I kind of thought, I think it'll get through that probably, and because the color was so good, the color in this was just fantastic. Ended up selling for $567,000, which is a pretty strong price for a piece of Lang Yao. And of course, it wasn't marked, which these pieces rarely ever were, especially in the Kangxi period. They generally didn't mark them at all, as far as I know. They did later, but they put marks on these pieces, especially in the 19th century, but not before. All right, as a general rule. And then the chrysanthemum dishes. There were 2 chrysanthemum dishes in the sale. This was the one that brought the most money. It was a powder blue glazed chrysanthemum dish, and these were based on. These became popular during the Qing dynasty. They were based on Sung lacquer forms. In the Sung dynasty, they did lacquer chrysanthemum formed dishes, very similar to this in appearance, and with the petals running around the outside. And in the Qing dynasty, these got picked up, and especially the Yongchen Emperor was very fond of them. There's some comparables in the Bauer collection in Switzerland and so forth. There are others around. They are known. There have been a couple of them for sale in the last year or 2, but they are very, very, very rare. And this one was estimated at $200,000 to $300,000, 7 inches in diameter, and it ended up selling for $819,000. The other dish, I think it was green, ended up selling for around $600,000. Not quite as desirable as the blue, but very, very lovely, both of them, and very good price. To put it mildly. And I don't know what the provenance on this is. Let's see here. It came from the Gans collection, Los Angeles, and then Harold Carter, New Mexico, and then to Jim Lally. So not an extensive background, but rare birds always do well. And then this yew celadon ewer in cover, sitting in its original warming basin. This is a really, really rare package from the 5 dynasties to Northern Song period, but the shape and form is very unusual. It is a known form. There are institutions that have these in them, but you don't see this shape very often. And it did so well, but be expecting to see copies of this thing turning up on the market. sometime in the not too distant future, because it just blew away everything. It was just a great example. The bowl is perfectly potted, powerfully potted, with this rolled out foot, beautifully done sides, very finely finished, and then there's this perfectly fitting ewer into it with all this incise decoration. Just a great example. And probably Northern Sung, they're saying 5 dynasties to Northern Sung, but it did very, very well. And in the end, let's see what it brought. I'm going to log in. I didn't log in yet. Hold on, folks. There we go, $756,000 US. So it did really, really well. It did very, very well. That's, as you know, it's 300, 600, 4.5, 5 times its high estimate. Did absolutely great. All right, and then over to this is the very rare Sgraffiato Siju decorated vase, Northern Sung to Jin Dynasty. A beautiful piece, 9 inches tall, with a repair to the rim. Now, this is the thing, I was wondering how this would do, because it is an old Japanese lacquer type repair to the rim, and I was wondering if it would hold it back, because the estimate on it was fairly strong. But this was a beautifully done example, absolutely beautifully done. And in this case, the repair didn't seem to hurt it at all. It was estimated at $150,000 to $200,000, and it ended up selling for $277,000 with a repair. But the carving and decoration and the potting, the pear form of the vase is really good. A really splendid example, and quality counts. Always look at the quality of the piece first, regardless of how rare it might be in its type. The quality of the work always comes through as the most important thing. And then over to this Yuzhou celadon, censored Northern Sung to Jin Dynasty. Again, beautifully done. There's a few examples of these in the Palace Museum, but a very, very rare type. There was no provenance prior than just Jim Lally getting it somewhere, and that's often the story. Dealers, he's not going to announce. Sometimes the dealers buy from collectors, and the collector says, I don't want to be announced as the previous owner for their own privacy, and so forth. This was estimated at $50,000 to $70,000. Made very quick work of that, and sold for just about almost 10 times its high estimate, for $680,000. So that's like 9.5 times its high estimate. But it did beautiful. It did beautifully. It just did. But it was a great example. Beautiful relief work on it all the way around. Lion foot base support. The handles, the flange handles, were all intact, and it was a beautiful color. And it was early celadon, as you know. Northern Sung and Tajin is on the front end of the of celadon wares, and it did very well. $680,000, way over its estimate. And then this was the biggest thing in Jim's sale, was this Guan bottle vase, Southern Sung, extremely rare piece. There it is, and not a very large piece, but beautifully done. The glaze on this was outstanding. The gold crackle was just terrific on it. Very, very neat, very orderly. Produced a beautiful pattern going down the body. And this was fairly early. This was early stuff for them. And it was only 5 inches tall. Keep that in mind, 5 inches tall. And it came from the Winkworth collection. Stephen Winkworth was a famous British collector, dealer, or dabbler, so to speak. And then it sold again in London. And it sold in 1938 at Sotheby's. And then it belonged to Dr. Carl Kemp, the legendary Swedish collector, who had a massive collection of celadons, in particular Sungwares. He loved them. And then it was sold. It went from the Kempe collection, ended up somehow going to Jim Lally for his place. And here's a picture of the bottom. There's the Kempe label. Is that CK. And you will see this label around. Unfortunately, fakers are copying it. But this was a very famous, very instantly recognizable label. Beautifully done bottom. A little bit of wear here showing what you do want to see. You don't want to see it too perfect. And ended up selling for $2.5 million, 2.5 times its high estimate. Did very, very well. And then there was this one. This was the Longquan Celadon Guan type vase, another fine monochrome, Southern Sung, beautifully done. It has this nicely done compressed lower body and this rather tall tapering neck coming off of it. But again, that beautiful, almost aqua blue color glaze with a very nice crackle. And they show some, here's a picture of the bottom of it. If you're ever wondering what the base of one of these looks like, that's what it should look like right there. And like I said, always, if you can, make copies of these foot rims for your own records, for your own files, so you can look them up. So if you come across the copies of these, of which there are many, 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 many of them on the market, you'll be able to instantly say, no, the foot looks wrong. It looks wrong. But it's how you learn about it. This was estimated just 40 to 60,000. It was a very reasonable estimate by all accounts prior to the sale. They thought, well, it's going to bring more than that. And it did. It brought 478,000, or about, what's that work out to? About 6.5 times its high estimate, 7 times its high estimate. It did really, really well. Beautiful thing. And then over to the Lally library. If you ever wonder, is it worth buying all these books that we talk about all the time, and references and things that you need to really learn this stuff. These are some of the top lots from Jim's sale. One of them was about 1,100 auction catalogs going back to the 1930s from Sotheby's, brought $302,000 against an estimate of $12,000 to $18,000. Then he had 600 or 700 Christie's catalogs from earlier times. That sold for $126,000. And another group of catalogs for $58,000. And on and on and on. And there were lots of other great rare books in here. And these are, if you're ever wondering what kind of books you might want to buy, it's always interesting to go and see what bring huge amounts of money later on when they get sold, because they're probably of a type that are the most beneficial to learn from. And of course, there were legendary books like the Morgan collection. I used to have a set of these years ago. I came across them and enjoyed them for a while and sold them. And this time around, they brought 9,000. And then there was assorted exhibition catalogs, and on and on and on. But you go through it. There's some interest. They have the Bauer collection over here, which was unsurprisingly the 6 books brought $5,000, or they typically sell for around $600 to $800 a volume these days. But any of the Bauer books are so well illustrated, beautifully done, and lots of information in them, and very good photography. And it just went down the page. But anyway, these auctions of the books did extremely well. This was 116 lots, and they came out to, well, it averages out to about $5,000 a lot for reference books. And this shouldn't come as a big surprise, but to many of you, because you've seen what happens to the British Museum's Ming book that came out a number of years ago. It was originally sold for around $75, and today you can't find one for under $1,000 in just 10 or 15 years. And that's because they don't reproduce reference books in many cases. They print them once, they sell 3,000 or 4,000 copies, and that's the end of it. If they sell that many. Sometimes they don't even sell that many, and then later people scramble around trying to get them. But always buy specialized reference books. They're worth the investment in what you learn from them. And down the road, most of the time, you're probably gonna profit from them. If you kick the bucket and your kids sell your stuff, they'll do well with your books if they choose not to read them. Encourage them to read the books. All right, and this was the other one, Sotheby's. This was that group of auction catalogs from Sotheby's. Lots of familiar covers on here if you've been collecting for any length of time, and then on it goes from there. And then there was the important Chinese works of art sale that was conducted in the U.S. During Asia Week, and it was very spotty. If you go through it, you're gonna see some things that did really, really well, and you're going to see some things that didn't do really, really well, and so forth. But at any rate, that's where they are. All right, that's it for now, and we'll be back tomorrow with the regular weekly video, and we're going to take a look at an auction house out in California that just seems intent on selling fakes, and whatever news comes up along the way. Thanks for watching, and have a great week. Subscribe if you haven't so far, and it's good to be back. All right, and we go on. Bye-bye.